All right, this is the Downtown Development Authority meeting. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025, and it is 6 p.m. Let's stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kim, do you need would you mind doing roll call? I can give you handy this if you'd like.
Thank you, because I didn't bring my cheat sheet. Okay. Supervisor File,
Here.
David Gittens,
Present.
Tara Hansen is absent, Sam Morocco,
Here.
John Doolin,
Here.
Gus Sutuna,
Here.
and Kimberly Hart.
All right, awesome. First agenda item is for us to approve the minutes from August 20th, 2025, regular minutes. Somebody like to make a motion for that?
I'll motion.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Presentations, I believe we're going to talk about that in line item I, reports with the Carlisle Group. And we've got public comment for anybody. Are you, gentlemen, I'm not sure who you are. I apologize. I'm Dave Gittens, the chairperson.
So we're both with Noack and Frost here to talk about that.
Okay, all right, very, very good. So no public comments. And so are there any changes that need to be made to our agenda from anybody? Anything added or subtracted? Okay. No financial matters at this time, so we'll move to reports, resolutions, and recommendations. So we have safety path encouragement planning as line item 1, and then the DDA strategic investment plan, which is the second item we'll be discussing. The Carlisle Group sent over in an email both of these items, and since you're here, Mr. Carlisle, would you like to go over those?
Yeah.
So we're talking about safety paths, right?
Yes, safety path first.
Right, okay. So a major component of the DDA plan is to improve aesthetics as well as pedestrian access throughout the corridor. And, you know, as we observed in the plan, and you already know, our pathway system, our walkway system, our sidewalk system, whatever you want to call it along Dixie Highway, is a mishmash of various different types of systems. You know, we've got sidewalks, we've got safety paths that meet the township standards, and then we have these paved shoulders, which go back to the time of the original DDA when the state widened Dixie Highway to 5 lanes and introduced these, what they refer to as paved shoulders, that were never intended nor have never been recognized as part of the safety path system. Because when you say paved shoulders, that's exactly what it means. It's a shoulder. However, we all know from experience that those paved shoulders have been used by pedestrians. And they are an entity that are not maintained. The state doesn't maintain them, the township doesn't maintain them. And so they've created a real albatross, I think, in the township along Dixie Highway. Several years ago, there were discussions with MDOT about them working with us to be able to eliminate or redesign those paved shoulders and actually create a separated pedestrian system along Dixie Highway that was safer, cleaner, more aesthetically pleasing. And when we resurrected the DDA and developed the new plan, that became a priority to address those particular safety paths. The problem is that we have little to no information about what actually needs to be done. And no information leads to no idea of the full extent of cost about what needs to be done. And lacking information, we cannot adequately seek other sources of funding other than small bits of funding that we've been able to receive through grants to be able to make any improvements to that system. And so what this particular proposal was about, we did this in discussion with Dave McKee, who is our director from DPW, and Brian, myself, is to actually get a proposal to do the analysis of what actually needs to be done to improve that system through there. And we're not talking about something that could possibly happen overnight, but it is something that long-term, the DDA plan talks about a vision of improving that. So to start the whole thing, in the strategic investment plan, which we'll talk about later, to make this more realizable in chunks rather than the entire, there's 5 miles of roadway in the DDA between White Lake Road and Dixie Highway. We have 5 miles, which means almost 10 miles on each of frontages on each side. As I broke the DDA into segments. So there's 5 segments that are described really on the cover sheet, described well on the cover sheet of the Nowak-Frous proposal. And what this proposal does the complete and thorough analysis of what exists, what the deficiencies and gaps are, and then what recommendations there are for improvement. But as important as that, it also incorporates the use of technology that will better identify what the things are that are underground. Is that correct?
Not exactly underground.
But-
What's described in here is a surveying tool.
Yeah.
A LiDAR scan, so we can get a very extremely detailed scan of the entire corridor or corridors.
Yeah. I'll let them explain the technology better than I will. But the idea is to incorporate technology into really more efficiently being able to create this inventory and analysis of the entire system throughout the DDA so that we have this information moving forward about what things we have to deal with and what improvements can actually be made. So I included in my cover memo the fact that this had been submitted also simultaneously to Dave McKee on behalf of the Safety Path Committee. It so happens they had a meeting, I think the supervisor was at that meeting, a week ago. And one of the things I was suggesting to them in my memo is that the cost of this study be shared on a 50-50 basis between Safety Path Committee and the DDA. There's obviously an economy of scale if we do the entire thing at once. If this is done in segments, then you have mobilization and everything that has to occur at every step of the way. And there might even be some alternatives in between that I think Jason is probably prepared to discuss with you. But I thought that, before we make any decisions, we've got to first decide and figure out what it is we have and how do we need to fix it, and what is it going to take to fix it. The Safety Path Committee, I think balked a little bit because this is the first time that they've seen it, and I think have some. And I'm not going to I mean, Chuck, you were there, I mean, but I believe, as Dave has characterized it to me, is believe that they have a lot of priorities that they have to fit to meet in this township, and we're not sure this was the best use of their money to do this study. I'll allow that to, we can discuss that and how we might want to approach that moving forward. But regardless of what what you do, we're going to have, regardless of the extent of what you want to do, we have to have an analysis of what is there and what needs to be done to improve the pedestrian system throughout Dixie Highway, if that indeed remains your priority as it's expressed in the plan. In terms of the actual performance of the study and what NOAC and Frous would actually do, I will leave that up to them to be able to explain better. But that was the thinking behind this, that before we spend money on trying to improve something, you gotta know what you have to improve. So, I think that's the extent of what I can say about this at this point. I would say that as far as coordination with the Safety Path Committee, I would like there actually to be some continued communication with them. And perhaps the DDA, a couple of members of the DDA can meet with the Safety Path Committee and explain the thinking behind this, about why it's important as an investment. I think there's other discussion about, well, should there be other elements of infrastructure that we should be investing in? Yes, there always is. However, you have a certain amount of resources that you have, and you have to make a decision as to where you want to best allocate those. The safety pass system, and remember, part of the thinking in the DDA plan was that the safety path system was going to serve as a cornerstone towards other aesthetic improvements. So there were going to be, in conjunction with improvement of the safety paths, there were going to be landscaped nodes and seating areas and things that were going to be visible extensions of what you're trying to do at the Gateway Park, all up and down Dixie Highway, to make it look better than it does right now. And to me, that doing those things in absence of improving the safety path system is a waste of money. Doing those things together is a whole package now, where you are providing the visual improvements along with an improved system of mobility along there that in the long run I think will improve the overall aesthetic and economic environment of the corridor from that standpoint. So, Jason, do you want to say more about this?
Yeah. Well, if we can introduce the team here. So I'm Jason Longhurst with Noack and Frous. With me tonight is Steve Sutton. He's also with Noack and Frous. Steve leads our LiDAR department, and he's also got pretty extensive experience with pathway projects. So I handle a lot of the plan reviews for Independence Township. We oversee the construction inspection, and then Steve works with Dave McKee's office to do a lot of the DPW and pathway projects as well. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Steve and let him kind of speak to the LiDAR aspects that Mr. Carlisle had mentioned, and some different strategies we have for implementing the project, because I know we weren't sure how the project was going to be broken up, and if multiple phases were going to go or different aspects. So I think what we had in the proposal is kind of a good starting point, but we're definitely flexible as to how that gets rolled out as we move forward. So,
Yeah, so as Jason mentioned, we've worked with Dave on the Safety Path Committee for probably 10 years or more, design and implementing different segments of that pathway system here through the township. We worked with him to put the Safety Path Master Plan together about 2 years ago. So I am familiar with other priorities that group has. So that's just one aside. Just to explain to you what you're looking at here, this was the segment 1 through 5 that Mr. Carlisle mentioned as he's split it up throughout the township. So what we looked at was we are right now beginning a similar, if not identical, process along Dixie Highway from the White Lake Dixie intersection northerly to Deer Hill. That's a project that's being largely funded by a SEMCOG grant. And that project includes doing a very detailed survey of the north side of Dixie, looking at the right-of-way maps to determine where the property lines even are, so that when you go to look at where can you put a safety path, you gotta understand where the property lines are. And believe me, they do vary greatly from point A to point B. In addition to that, once we go through that process, and again, I'm speaking of the SEMCOG project, but it completely parallels this process. You look at placement, you look at geography, you look at elevations out there, right-of-ways to come up with a conceptual drawing, conceptual cost, and then there's also public engagement, community meetings to get feedback from the residents along that section. What would they like to see, what don't they want to see, and then ultimately prepare like a final deliverable report. So when we were approached by Carlisle, he talked to us about what he would like to see done here in the DDA sections, and it seemed to exactly parallel that process. So in each of these sections, there's a lot of numbers in here, 1 through 5, because we weren't sure if this was something that wanted to be done holistically together, or if you wanted to segment it depending on costs. But it breaks out the costs for the survey, for the conceptual design, for the estimating of what that design is going to cost. Do you want to engage in a community meetings with residents, and ultimately a final deliverable? So when you see the different sections and you see the different costs, they're all attributable to different factions of what we have to do or what we're proposing to do.
Very good. Mr. Carlisle. No, sorry. Mr. Fowl, sorry. It's been a long day.
That's an
Mr.
insult to
Fowl,
him, I
Mr.
think.
Fowl,
I
maybe.
think it's an insult to him, Mr. Carl. With the survey, tell us, are you staying above ground only?
At this point, it would be above ground only. What we will implement is utility maps that we can gather from MDOT or any of the jurisdictions that own properties through there, that we can try to connect some of the dots for the underground. But that's a whole nother facet of the survey that ultimately, if you propose to move forward with this as a real project, will have to be ferreted out, but that's not included in this number right now. This is just above ground for purposes of doing a conceptual drawing and mapping out the right-of-ways.
How much does it cost to do
The
under the ground? Below the
It's-
ground?
That could certainly be, requoted in here, but it's.
A ballpark, are we talking about the same amount of money, more,
it'd be
less?
Times 2.
Times 2, so it's a lot more expensive, okay. And then you're gonna put together a proposal and say, basically, this is what we're looking at. At some point at the end of the day, we're gonna get, this is what it looks like it should cost you to go through and do this, or is it just a feasibility study?
No, it's a conceptual plan that we would work with the Carlisle group, because as he mentioned, I think that there's an envisionment of some other features throughout this, almost like a streetscape type of a development. So I think the spline that pulls everything together, ties everything together, is gonna be that sidewalk. So collectively, we would have to work out where that best fits, where the properties are, do we need easements to achieve what you want to achieve? That's a whole other cost factor that you'll ultimately have to consider. But that's the stuff that we bring to the surface with this round of design.
And then
So-
it would be another round of design, once a project's been selected, to implement the full construction drawing package that could go out for bids.
This is, thank you, Jason. This is a plan that would be something that you could use for grant submittals. As Mr. Kyler mentioned, I think the goal is to put you in a position to be able to apply for grants. So this plan would give you a cost assessment of what this will cost. It'll also give you the details necessary to reach out for additional state grants that might be out there.
Okay, so again, just help me understand, what is the cost assessment? You said it'll give you a cost assessment. What do
We
we?
do a conceptual layout of the sidewalk. We
Okay.
understand how many easements will we need. We understand, do we need retaining walls? Do we need
And do we understand then the
culverts?
cost of those things, as you're saying? Here's the ballpark of what it's gonna
Yeah,
cost, kind of like a range type thing?
Well, what'll happen is we'll come together with a layout that we all like, that you guys like. And we're gonna look at all those factors, and we're gonna create for segment one, what we believe the total cost of construction is going to be for that segment of pathway.
And how long or how good are those cost estimates usually for? And I'm gonna ask that because
Yeah.
you could go out and do this, and let's just say we say yes tonight. You go out and you get it done in the next 2 months, 3 months. I'm not sure how long the implementation would take to do this, but let's say you get it done that time frame. And then all of a sudden now we're like, well, that's great. We come up with this beautiful looking thing, but we haven't done anything from underneath, and we don't want to tear it all up when we want to go through and continue the water lines or connect the sewers and all that stuff below the ground. So it seems like we're almost putting the cart before the horse, unless you're telling me that estimate would be good for like 2 or 3 years.
Well, what we usually do in these type of cases is put an escalation factor on there. We know that you're not gonna build this in 2026. So usually we would have 2025, let's say we finish this in 2025, and then we'll have 3 or 4 years beyond that with projected, as much as anybody can project,
Sure.
escalation costs.
Okay.
Well, I mean, one of the points about this is that the majority of Dixie Highway already has underground utilities,
But not all of it.
not all of it. And one of the things I've asked Mr. McKee to identify for us is where there are gaps in that system. I know one area in particular is Clarkson Cemetery.
Right.
But, you know, be it that as it may, there are other areas, but not extensively throughout Dixie Highway. Most areas, most properties there are served with water and sewer, with the extension. There are less areas that are served by water, that are not served by water and sewer than are served by water and sewer. I believe that's a fair statement. Is that not, you know, in order there? So I don't think that, I understand where that concern is coming from. And doing this is not at the absence of considering that also. Again, as I've pointed out to the DDA in the past, these are leveraged funds. We have other sources of funding that we can use to supplement the safety pass system, to supplement the water and sewer system, and other, perhaps other infrastructure maybe that we are not even responsible for. But the whole idea is to use this as seed money to supplement those other sources of funds, then therefore don't have to use 100% of those funds to implement those improvements. So this is going to be a long-term prospect. So whatever cost estimates they come up with now, Chuck, they're obviously gonna change.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not so worried about that as much. I mean, you know, it would surprise me like, oh, they're good for, 6 months. Okay, that's an issue, right? And so, but like we're going through is that I'm trying to figure out, which came first, the chicken or the egg in this particular case. Do we look and see what needs to be done underground first? And how much is that gonna cost? And he's saying now it's double, so why are we gonna go spend, so this would be the question, why are we gonna go spend 148, because let's say we're smart, and we have the funds, and we wanna take advantage of the discount, and so go spend $148,000, then come back and go spend $300,000 to figure out, oh shit, we got $5 million worth of crap we have to do underground, and we can't do this now. I mean, so that's what, shouldn't we figure out underground first before we figure out what we're gonna do on top of the ground?
I've got a question. I mean, so we've got the paved shoulders there. Wasn't there a study done when those were put in to know what is?
No, that was so
underground?
long
That was
ago.
back when I was a very young man.
So they didn't do, they just laid concrete over whatever's
Yes,
under the
I mean,
ground.
Yes, of course there was, but I mean, that, the Dixie Highway was widened in the late 80s, early 90s is when that work was done. But yeah, do we have utility maps? Yeah, we do. I mean, we generally know where most of the utilities are in the Dixie Highway.
I guess I envision this working in conjunction with the DPW.
Right.
We've got all the utility maps for the water and sewer that's out there. I'm sure Dave already has a wish list of needed improvements and needed extensions. So I see these as going in conjunction together. And the underground aspect of the survey, so that I guess to talk a little bit more about LiDAR, the scan that we're gonna be doing is basically mounted to a vehicle. So we are setting some control. We are having a conventional survey crew out there for control, for establishing the right-of-way. And then the scan is basically on the back of the truck. And then we process all of that. To get all of the storm inverts, the sanitary inverts and all of that, that's where the additional mobilization and all the fees come from, because we physically have to go pop those manholes and measure those inverts. And for the pathway master planning, it's not necessary. For utility master planning, if we have areas where we want to do upgrades and infrastructure, then that's where we get into that. And I would say that the double aspect would probably be more towards the survey quote and not towards the overall scope quote, just to narrow that down a little bit.
We have storm drain issues that may have to be addressed, especially since we're looking at rezoning some of the property. And we got Microcell, I think is the name, don't quote me on the name. But just came in and got permits to go through and lay fiber down all through there. So, there's some other projects that are gonna be going on, and that's why, I hate the idea of going through, and again, it's just inexperience, I'll come clean on that part. That we go and we spend a bunch of money to find out that, one, we have substrate issues, under the ground issues that have to get dealt with first and foremost, and then that's gonna take up and eat up so much of the money to for a while there, or, we're gonna have to get grants and all that stuff. That's just gonna take a whole bunch of time, and I'm just trying to figure out, from a timing standpoint, is there something else this 148 could be used? Not that we don't need it, we do. It's just a timing issue in my head.
Sure.
Sam?
I got a lot of different questions about this, so I'm gonna just start from my vision, okay, to get Dixie Highway to have safe pedestrian passage up Dixie Highway, which we don't have. The township clearly has neglected Dixie Highway for decades. I know, I have a building there. I drive it every day. There's sections of it. I guess what confuses me, and I talked to Dave McKee, is that, I called him the other day and I said, how come the paved shoulders, north of Dixie have, are just covered in gravel and broken glass, and the weeds are 3 feet tall between the sidewalk and the curb. You pull into our township, it looks like hell. It just looks like a rundown township. And he said, well, that's not a safety path. That's MDOT's paved shoulder, Okay, so what is safety path? What specifically? So let me, make my speech. But then you get down to the little bridge by the car wash that we just replaced, okay? So there's a little, that was like a hiccup in the plan, and then there's by Outback to the bottom of Waterford Hill is the only place I ever see them mow, and maybe in front of the cemetery. Very minimal investment. Not from Chuck's administration, from many, many administrations. Dixie Highway's been neglected by the safety path. And we're all paying commercial taxes for the millage of the safety path, and we're getting basically zero from them. Now, I understand now that they got all these hiccups, everyone's passing the blame. That's an MDOT, curb. It's not part of our safety path system. It's not this and that. So part of my thing is, two things. How do we turn it into safety path? And I think that is part of what we're talking about, the design. What we would be proposing would now become safety path and safe passage. I see Dixie Highway as the most dangerous pedestrian road in the township, one of the most dangerous. They're walking right along the edge of the road on broken gravel and broken concrete and rubble. It's not even safe to put your feet down. We talked about not shoveling in the winter because you're liable for it, but I look at it from a different point of view. I don't care whose it is, as a township as a whole, we should make whatever there is to walk on safer, and we haven't been. So I think that I look at it as the plan of a path, whether we're underground, above ground, whatever, to identify how we would create in the future. And I always look at this DDA as the last one that we're probably gonna ever get, and everyone after this will start opting out. So it's now or never, right, in our lifetimes, to fix the streetscape of Dixie Highway. So if we have to, spend the money to come up with the conceptual plan, figure out what easements we need, then figure out how to do it in blocks, whatever, I think that I'm very disappointed that the Safety Path Committee didn't look at it like we're doing them a favor, which is what it is. Not that them paying half would be doing us a favor. We're gonna invest millions and millions of dollars into the safety path for them. So I told Dave, I'd like to go to a meeting and explain to them how they got this backwards. That we're the ones investing in them. They're just giving us, 2 cents and we're gonna give them $2. So I do have that concern. I think you need a plan. I want to invest in the plan. How in-depth that plan is, I think can be layered over time and distance. You know what I mean? Maybe we don't dig deep in the whole thing. Maybe we do an overlay first, like to identify what work would need to be done, and that's, I think, what's in here. Then piecemeal it, working with Dave. There's gonna be section 3 might need sewer and water, section 4 might not need anything, section 5 might need, you know what I mean? Like, we've gotta get a game plan, and to bring back development, Dixie looks all run down, it's terrible. To freshen it up, this is what I believe to be as our only opportunity to really change the streetscape of Dixie, is the safety path investment. Little spots where benches and little, landscaping areas can be, and street trees, and, really change the dynamic from I travel all over the country on my motorcycle. I only drive on US highways. There's pretty ones, and then there's kind of just beat up ones, I think ours has been neglected a little bit, and certainly they could be prettier. So, in the same interim, and this might be with Chuck and the board, I think that we as a board, or we as it kind of works the same as this. You've got a bunch of residents who volunteer to do it, make decisions, like that, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be more concentration on the safetiness of the safety path. Like, it seems like we spend a lot of money on rural areas, safety path, way more than we do in the urban areas of the safety path. And we have for a long time, it shows, and it probably because of the complexity and what's involved, and why it's easier to make connections here, here, and here than it would be to make it on Dixie Highway, because you've got MDOT involved, and these other things. So I'm disappointed with how Dixie is, and I don't know how we fix it, but as part of the DDA, I think that we need to focus on the safety part. Maybe some of our budget needs to be allocated to clean up the parts that aren't under the safety path control, that are under MDOT's control annually, or get at least the gravel off the roads, or at least do something that, for MDOT, and this is not part of your discussion, this is part of our budgeting discussion, that it's really like there's this no man's land, that it's nobody's responsibility. MDOT won't do it, and it's not safety path, truly safety path, so they don't want to use safety path millage for those areas, So it's a kind of two-part thing. I'd like to see the overall design and the impact it would have, what it would take to implement it, I guess, would be the study. And then, on a separate note, what we could do as the DDA to allocate funds to maintain or at least clean up parts that seem to be nobody's problem. So at least it's safer and cleaner, and you don't drive in and see 3-foot tall weeds and gravel all over. People don't know that's a paved sidewalk. It looks like a sidewalk in our community. They don't know the difference. It just looks run down, dirty, full of broken car parts and accident parts and gravel. And that is all part of the optics of Dixie. So I don't want to lose sight of the not putting focus on the parts that everyone seems to be passing off, or, not being. So I just want to throw that out there,
To your point, if we do all this and make it look beautiful, how does that change? How does it change, having these accident parts and everything like that? Who takes care of it?
Well,
Sounds
once it
like
becomes
everybody
safety path, it's maintained by the safety path millage. Once
So
it's
they're
truly
saying that
safety
it's not
path,
because it's a shoulder.
they don't do it. They won't maintain it. Now, Dave said, occasionally if someone calls and there's piles of broken glass, they'll send a guy out and sweep it up. But if, as a DDA, and we have 5 miles of road, I think that we should implement into our strategy cleaning up and making the parts that aren't being done by the safety path safer for our residents, and pick up that tab through our funding. Just, I don't, know who to allocate it to, or if we have to pay a subcontractor to, I don't know. But I don't, we're not gonna be putting safety paths in for years, so I don't want it to go years that it just stays with 3-foot weeds between the paved shoulder and the curbs and, and covered with gravel and not safe to
Yeah, but
walk.
that's not on these, guys,
No,
that's
no.
an internal issue. Kim, yes?
So while I agree with your concern, Sam, I think that the intention of this presentation is, and correct me if I am wrong, is to get an overall of what is actually needed and a lot of your concerns would be addressed during the development of the design and that. So we would counter or figure out some of the issues that we have, segment by segment, because they could be different by segment, at the same time that we're figuring out these designs and
Yeah,
that.
it always starts with an existing condition plan. We're gonna find out, what do you have? Where are the paved shoulders? Where is the gravel? Where are the right-of-ways out there? Again, I can't stress that enough, because I've been a part of many safety path projects where easement acquisition becomes a stumbling block to doing what you wanna do. So you, as a group, need to understand where do we own, where's the right-of-way, and where would we not have right-of-way to build a safety path?
And my thought on this is that we would see overlays as far as where are easement, where
Oh,
are
certainly,
utilities,
certainly.
where are the things. So it would overlay on a master design on it. That is what I'm envisioning. Is that correct?
Yeah, the base map will have all of the existing conditions, all the property lines.
Mhm.
And on top of that is a conceptual layout of what is the most fiscally and feasibly responsible placement of, to your question, the safety path in the township size is an 8-foot wide paved pathway.
Yeah.
And that's important to know and to use as a goal, because when you go for grants, especially through the federal government, through the state of Michigan, you have to maintain a specific width of pathway to be eligible for those grants. So in my mind, that's a safety path. It's a completely separate paved pathway. It's not a sidewalk, it's a paved pathway that's separate from the curb by a distance.
So second part of my thought, as we get that, we would have an understanding of where we're going to have to purchase and buy and all of that, which could easily double these costs to get that area, those areas that we don't have, for
The easements?
easements or
Easily double.
in the costs.
Triple or quadruple.
Yep.
I mean, easement
So-
acquisition is expensive.
When you're looking at these figures, they're deceptive to the overall, is, I guess, my point. Not so much for the schematics of it, but to actually make it happen.
Oh, yeah, I'm
So
expecting
that's-
it to be
yeah.
tens of millions of dollars
Yeah,
by
so-
the time we're done.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so these are just creating the model, really,
This is creating a conceptual plan
It's a blueprint.
right?
of what you want to use as your goal through the years.
Yeah.
Use that as a plan for grant submittals. Use that and overlay any issues with the underground that Dave wants to participate in. Certainly, this won't be done in a vacuum. So, this is not a plan that you're gonna be able to give to a contractor and build it. This is just a conceptual master plan.
And from that, we can address the issues that you have
Yeah,
concerning
Yes.
all of those. So that's you're kind of like on step 2.
Well, if I could make a
of it.
point, what I see the benefit of this too is that we're trying to revitalize Dixie Highway. We're getting redevelopment, we got the car wash, we got things. If we had the conceptual plan done before the car wash came, the people investing in the community to revitalize we would know how they need to put it in to meet, like if if we wait and then someone comes in and redevelops the movie theater project, and we don't say, it's gotta be 4.5 feet off the road, it's 8 foot wide, it goes through here, this is the plan, they're gonna just do what everybody else does, which is randomly pick a spot to put it in that's convenient or better, or like I wonder now about the car wash, it worries me because the way the car wash sidewalk is in front of the new car wash is not ideal to how it should have in a long-term plan, lined up with the bank on the one side and the party store on the other. Now, that's already not really where it should have been. And we missed that window by not
Yeah.
having this plan first, and now everyone has to comply with the plan. So the longer we wait for,
Yeah.
I'm not saying the underground study and invest, but the placement, how it would work, where the most feasible place to put it would be, as soon as we can do that, it betters the odds that we then pay the developer to put in that section in the right exact spot, like the condo complex at Deer Hill and Dixie Highway, right, that big one that nobody wanted originally. They brought sewer all the way, or, I'm sorry, they brought water all the way down Dixie Highway to put in that neighborhood. You know, so they made a monumental investment in the water infrastructure for us to cover that whole, going that far north. So all of that, so my worry would be somebody buys the courthouse property across the street and they have to do the same, and we don't know where our, what we had designed is not ready for them. So I think it puts us at a disadvantage of doing it right by not, so maybe we have to layer how we invest in the plan, but we need to have a blueprint that shows where we want the safety path to go sooner than later, in my opinion, before any more redevelopment comes, so it aligns properly, if that makes
that's what this
sense,
is.
you know what I mean?
Chuck, did you
I
have a
think
point?
Kim hits right on
I
an
think that's what
excellent
this
point,
is.
because I think what you're really talking about is, having the information to be strategic about this.
Right.
Because there's gonna be some areas where you say,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense for our investment, we need to do something else. And I would be the first one to tell you that, that don't spend the money there, spend the money here if it's gonna have a bigger payback in terms of benefit from that standpoint. But you don't even have the information now to make those decisions. So,
Yeah, I'm not objecting to the study. But to me, I'm looking at it like this. We're gonna go design a house without having a piece of property. I think this is the second phase. I mean, do I think we're both gonna I think without a doubt, we're gonna improve Dixie. Without a doubt. That is the end goal. We're gonna do it. We're committed to doing it. I'm just saying that, let's find out what we need from an infrastructure standpoint. And if we could afford it, I would say just do both at the same time. Let's just get it going. But I'm just saying, I don't think we have, if it's double, we don't have that kind of funds. So I'm just wondering, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
So the double, I just want to be clear, I think Jason mentioned it, it's really just the first line item generally in each of these segments. We're not doubling the cost of the study.
He's
to get
talking
the-
about, are you talking about the underground?
I'm talking about the other.
Like
I
doing
know,
everything.
I know, he is, and to do the full survey, I'm saying that's where we're gonna be doubling costs, not the total cost of the study.
So if I was to say, give me a quote to do the underground study, first of all, do you guys do that?
Well, yeah, certainly.
Okay, that's what I figured. So if I said, give me the thing, so I want under the ground on top of the ground.
Then what we would do is we would take this proposal right here and modify it to include that scope in there.
So like what, add 10%?
No.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we really want to know what it's going to cost, we need both.
And
I mean-
what I would offer too is, even if you did one first, we can always add another one later. The LiDAR scan that we would do is something that everything can build on. It's not, the data is not gonna go bad. So we can always, a month later, a week later, a year later, add underground to it, depending on how the plan shakes out.
Yeah, to me, I mean, the easiest thing would be is make it attractive for us to do both at the same time.
Would this benefit DPW too?
It would.
In the sense that this master
Yep.
plan, if we did the underground, would benefit them because they
It'll
don't have
make
it
it easier for us to
tracked
go
either.
get some grants for the water and sewer. I
don't
mean,
have it.
there's all sorts of, like, I just got a call the other day from, I don't even know what the heck it is, but it has something to do with the fact that Dixie Highway is some sort of green belt thing. I'm gonna say it like that because I'm not quite sure what the state of Michigan was calling me and saying, that there's money, they wanna connect it. and-
Iron Belt?
Heritage
Iron
Road.
Mountain?
It's what?
Heritage Road?
It may be a Heritage Road or something like that, but they said, look, there's funds available to kind of continue that, which is along the safety path type stuff and all that. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, we're gonna need both. At the end of the day, we're gonna need both. And I'm just saying, if we're gonna do it, then let's just pay for both and get them done.
Should
And that gives us a much fuller picture. And yes, I know we're gonna suddenly, because we're looking at easements, and I'm part of the safety path, so I know that we got a stumbling block, because what's his name over there? You know, we're gonna have issues with the Deer Lake Inn, because there's not 8 feet there. You know, and so some of the things we're looking at is, in the safety path arena, we're looking at, we're not gonna make it a safety path, we're only gonna make it 6 feet, because that's really all we can get. And we might have to do that in front of like the Deer Lake Inn and all that, because there's just not the room. But I'm assuming that's part of your plan and what it would identify, right?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, our plan is gonna identify those problem areas.
yeah, and so I just think that, you know, this year, and I took it from Sam to heart when he said, look, 26 was really gonna be just the engineering year. And so if we can take those dollars, which it looks like we're talking, where's that number at?
146?
No, I think take 25 and 26, or we already spent,
Oh, you're talking about how much we've made,
yeah.
our budget?
Well, keep in mind too, that some of those dollars are community engagement type processes, and you may not even be ready for that or want to do that.
Yeah.
So you can almost take this somewhat as an à la carte menu and determine what is it that you want to accomplish in 2025 and 2026.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
I'm just trying to make you guys more money.
I appreciate
It
it.
doesn't sound like, it did sound like I was going down that road, but that's where I was going.
And I
No
have
pun intended.
actually asked Mr. McKee and challenged him to identify, you know, where are these problem areas? Dave and I've spoken about that. And I think we need to know about that.
Yeah,
I mean, everything else you're talking about, there is existing data. It's particular with the public utilities that are already there.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was gonna offer, is we would wanna meet with Dave to find out what those target areas are, and like, you know, storm sewer, it's all under MDOT's jurisdiction.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
we don't necessarily need storm sewer unless there's an area that's deficient that we wanna consider putting a drain in, or,
That's the only storm sewers there are in Dixie Highway.
so.
They're-
yeah, but I
they're
mean,
in-
if we're gonna be developing and looking for developing it, we're gonna have to take that into more consideration of what that's gonna look like, right?
But we may not need to go to the level of getting pipe sizes and invert elevations for storm sewer that we
Okay.
don't have jurisdiction over. We would show it from an alignment standpoint where they are, but maybe not get that full detail.
But
Maybe we
in
would
most
focus on.
cases, they're not in the right of way anyway.
So it-
They're in the road.
Yeah, so it's something that we could,
Well, except for the property he's talking about.
They're in, you know, most cases, the storm sewers are in the roadway itself as it is, so it's not, you know, the safety path construction affects how much of the surface of the ground?
12 inches.
12 inches. I think this issue is a little exaggerated, to be very honest. But I do think that it's well taken, and that I mean, when we first did the DDA plan, I said to Dave, give me a number to put in the plan for water and sewer improvements. And I put a number in there that is no more accurate than any of the numbers that we're talking about tonight. I don't think the issues of interference of underground utilities is as serious perhaps as it may seem in most cases. However, that does not say that we shouldn't collect that data. Most of it is existing data already. I think, Chuck, part of the problem is all these private utilities, particularly, cable and things like that, that they bury, 5 inches under the ground.
Right.
And generally, nobody knows where those are. Those are always a misdig problem, generally at the time of construction.
construction issue. Yeah.
Exactly. So, what I'm trying to say is, more communication, more discussion perhaps with the DPW, some discussion with the Safety Path Committee. This doesn't have to be acted on tonight because it's a next year project. But I think we're starting to get a sense of really what the deficiencies are in the data that you have to even make any decisions about spending money.
Question for Chuck. So if we want to do a thorough layered proposal, would there be a possibility that the difference between what we would need for our development versus what the township would use perhaps come out of DPW budget at some point in time, a portion of it.
Well, I think the safe thing to say, and Sam would be able to weigh in on this too, is that, you know, obviously any infrastructure costs from the DPW side would be covered by the DPW. And so we would probably look at it from that standpoint, because, you know, there's ways for the DPW to make that money back. So I wouldn't really be so concerned about that aspect of things. I think if we're gonna look at it from a study standpoint, I know right now we're talking about trying to pay it out of cash flow for the DDA's cash flow, but I don't know if it wouldn't just make sense to say, we're gonna go borrow 50 grand or 100 grand from the general fund and just get it all done, so we know exactly what we're looking at. And now we can go and just all go out and disperse and go get all the money from all the different things in all the different areas. And we have a much more concise plan to say, this is, when they go through and say, what'd you do? Oh, yeah, yep, we got this over here. You know, Jimmy's doing this, Bob's doing this, Shelley's doing that. Yes, we have a complete picture plan and understand where we're going. What I'm finding out with one of the projects I'm looking at right now is that they want to know, the more you know, and the more confident that you are that you can finish the project, the more likely they're going to give you the money. And so, I mean, too, that's why I'm saying, let's get the whole picture. It's great to go around and say, hey, we're gonna build this really beautiful house, and then find out that we're building it on a weird property that's got a swamp in the middle and doesn't perk out right, and now it's not gonna look like that, or it's gonna be cockeyed to the street, right? So I'm saying, let's just get it all done. We're gonna fix it, let's just go get it all done.
Let's fix it.
I think it's a tool
Yeah.
that we need, and again, for people that are coming to invest, you know, Bigsby came, the car wash came, anyone else that comes, we're at risk of them not getting it right,
I agree.
you know, because we didn't have it specifically,
You don't have your layout.
we don't have the layout of how we wanna do it, you know what I
Not
mean?
only
And-
part of that, but if you have a new development that comes in and purchases a property, let's say, for a redevelopment, then you can go to them and say, well, we need you to deed over the easement for our future safety path, as a part of your site
Or
plan.
to develop.
And I think that it would make it much more attractive, right? I mean, so I think obviously life's a lot of marketing, right? And so having a pretty picture of what the future's gonna look like will entice better quality businesses to invest in the area. So for sure, having that pretty picture, here's what the house is gonna look like, is extremely important. But we all know that the Clarkson Cinema's been a major problem, and I know that, you know, it may be the only example, right, of the whole stretch. But we know that the water sewer is a big issue right there, and that it's kept several companies from investing in that piece of property. If we go through and say, here's the plan, we got it all planned, laid it all out, this is what it's gonna be, I think it's much easier and less scary
Yeah.
or predictable is probably a better way of saying it, for them to come in and invest. And that's what I'm saying, let's just get the whole thing done. And they say, okay, so I can get in now on the ground floor, it's gonna look like this 3 years from now, well, that should automatically take my property value up by a factor of X. As opposed to hope they do something and just progress along at the whatever, you know, in real estate, at the normal growth rate that would have been there.
Right, and especially if we're gonna have little seating areas, we might need a little more depth in a property
Yeah.
that we want them to contribute to us as part of
Yeah.
our development negotiations or something like that. We don't even know what we would be asking for at this point if somebody said, I wanna develop this parcel on Dixie Highway. We wouldn't really have a clear vision
No.
of asking them at the commission, and Jason, you know, have them incorporate this into their plan right now.
No,
And then,
no.
hopefully, they'll bring some sewer and water with them, or they'll bring something else with them, you know, to make their development work, which will start chipping away at Dave's needs, you know what I'm saying? But we already identified that, and we already know, and I think it helps them too, then it's more clear, like if you buy this parcel, you need this, and then we can negotiate, are we gonna pay for it? Is DPW gonna pay for it, are they gonna pay for it as part of their development? You know, how is those costs going to be shared? And maybe we share, instead of saying, you gotta run sewer and water 600 feet down the road, you know, to entice the development, we say, well, we can do a partnership with you. You can do some of this, we can, you know, help you with some of that, and, you know, I just think without accurate information, you can't even really negotiate, in the best interest of the township, I don't think.
Right.
You know, so, I like Chuck's idea that, it's not a matter of when are we gonna have enough money, we're gonna have enough money, it's just a matter of time. You know, there's
Well,
a time lapse, and if we
I-
can get this done,
Enhance it.
we know next year we can pay it back.
Right.
You know, we know we're good for it.
With the sourcing that you have from more than just DDA, I mean, the DDA is going to have a substantial amount of money to be able to put into this. But there's also other sources from which to draw upon to get this information, so correct. You know, you've got it, you can do this. I believe it.
So I guess we would be asking for this estimates to be enhanced,
Yeah,
to go
I
to the
think
different
the next
parts
step
and
is-
give us a good
Right.
feel of what those costs are, and then go from there for
Yeah.
our overall.
And as far as who's paying for it, I'm just thinking about who else is gonna benefit from it. We're obviously gonna benefit from it.
Right.
The township's gonna benefit from it. Is the safety path gonna benefit from it?
Yeah.
Maybe there are other
Everybody is.
groups that would share the cost that, because if they're gonna benefit from it, the data, and use it, why would we be the only ones to front load that?
I think it gives us the opportunity with the overall all-in to go back and have a meeting with the safety path and say, maybe we're not gonna split it with you, but, here, this would be a fair percentage. Then go to the DPW and say, okay, we're gonna layer it in with your needs too, to go for grants, so maybe you could kick in some
Correct.
of this, and get, now, maybe we pick up the bulk of it, but we don't, I don't
But
think
we
it's
don't
right that
eat it
we
all.
cover the whole thing,
Right.
because we also have an obligation to the reinvestment and the redevelopment of Dixie Highway to the tenants they're paying into it, that they're getting the best bang for their buck too.
Sure.
So it's a fair and balanced approach.
And everyone would be on the same page, because they're all using the same
And
study.
we can start the clock ticking to go after federal and state funds sooner.
Right.
Because we're very complete, and like Chuck knows, if we're willing to say we can put in $1 million for this intersection, then maybe the state will say, all right, I'll put in $5 million. You're all in, and you did your research, you did your due diligence, and it's a feasible project, not just imaginary one that might come down the road someday. It's definitive.
So the only thing that I would, sorry.
No.
I'm used to being the chair. The only thing that I would suggest then is that since we're obviously going to be piggybacking on the study that the safety path is doing, is since you were obviously can now go back and discount that out because you discounted it if we did it all, now we're doing it on the back of that, put the discount on the DDA, give them an additional discount. You don't have to give it back to the safety path.
Good idea.
It's all
Okay, well, the next
taxpayer.
step here is actually for us to get with Dave McKee, DPW, and start to identify how we integrate existing utility information into this study, and how we identify where there are gaps in that information, where maybe more study needs to be done, or at least to know where we have problem areas. So I think we'll come back to you after we've been able to have that opportunity. The other part about this is that, again, I've asked Mr. McKee, okay, where is it that you want assistance in water and sewer improvements in Dixie Highway? You have to be specific, and you, in essence, have to make a proposal to the DDA for their participation. We can't guess where those things need to be. You need to tell us where our assistance from the DDA would be helpful to get that improvement done. And he has said, yes, he will do that. So we will follow up with Dave. We'll hold this, put this on hold for now, and come back when we've been able to figure this out to another to a DDA meeting. Probably not the next one, but perhaps. So, okay. Sounds good? All right.
Thank you, Steve and Jason. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Okay.
Everyone's on the same page. So, yeah.
Next item of business is the DDA strategic investment plan.
Well, this is, this sort of exhibits why this is a work in progress. Because, the discussion tonight obviously changes quite a bit of that. But something that I wanted to share with the DDA was the revised, and I know the press file has seen these. No.
You're special.
Productions.
That's why I was passing it down to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Township assessor has revised your TIF projections. And the important thing is, you can go all the way across the column, but the important thing is to look at the very right-hand column, because that shows what the total capture is, what the estimated capture is going to be. Everything up until, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. So right now, I believe that where we are is in the 24, 25, the capture is in, 25. So this year, although it's not complete, but the estimated capture for this year is going to be $305,000. Previous estimates said it was going to be $162,000. So it's nearly doubled. And what Mr. Babb has done is re-examined what the original projections were and has filled in some additional information that was missing. And so now your picture looks substantially different than it did in the projections that were upon which the plan was originally based. So, for example, what implication does this have? Well, your budget this year was based on $162,000. And you actually are going to collect over $300,000 in tax increment revenues. Fortunately, you haven't spent more than $162,000. In fact, you spent less than $162,000 at this point in time. So what is happening now is that this is the beginning of the accumulation of fund balance. And, as we worked with our Corridor Improvement Authority, we were always able to accumulate a fairly healthy fund balance so that when the times came or the need came to need to have funds to do a project that was larger than perhaps what your collection was in that year, you had the money to be able to do it. So the idea is to be able to do bigger projects, by accumulating fund balance. And that, of course, will be one of the things that is going to happen when the White Lake Road intersection is done, because there's going to be a substantial need there for township involvement in that. And we had originally put that in the DDA plan for the township to be able to do that. So you will have, if you follow a plan that I'm going to speak to you now, and it's not necessarily this plan, but a plan in terms of how you program the use of your money every year, you're going to be, spending within your means of the tax collection, but also probably, and if you do that, accumulating a fund balance so that when you have a large need for those funds, you'll have them there, okay? And so that's really the whole idea behind this, because it's all based on what the tax increments are that you're going to collect every year. So all told, over this period of time, up until 2038, there's nearly twice the amount of revenues that will be collected. And this is a very conservative estimate. This is only based on inflationary values. There's no
Not reinvestment.
There's no any investment here, so it
Based-
will be could be substantially more.
Yeah.
But every year, this is updated so that we have a new picture of what the revenues are. So that's one part of it. But the second part of it is,
Dick, if we get redevelopment, in front of parks of Stonewood and all that, this thing could just
that's
blow
all
up.
new, it's all new tax, yes,
You know?
it's all new taxable value.
You're going from vacant land to build out commercial, this thing could just go crazy.
That's where it expands substantially. So what I've done here is put together a draft strategic investment plan for you for your review and consideration for the next, it's basically your capital improvements plan for the balance of this year and the next 5 years. And what I suggest is that we did this with the CIA in a different fashion, but this is what we did. This basically provides you with a blueprint as a document, as a tool, basically, that guides your spending decisions, so that you have a plan that you're going to, this year, we're going to invest in this year, we're going to invest in that. You know, this is going to be how we're going to invest, and we just extend the time frame every year that we update this, so that you as board members can say 5 years from now, here's what we're going to be spending this money in. Now, it has to be dynamic, because opportunities always occur, and that's when you'll change the plan. That's when you'll change the plan and say, okay, well, this year we want to reallocate money to this rather than this, and then it'll just carry out into the future. So what I've tried to do is take what I have thought to be your priorities and put them into, you know, a table, a 6-year table of where money is going to be spent. The only known project at this point, obviously, is your Gateway Park, which some of that has already been spent for this year, but the majority of that will be spent next year in terms of implementing that. And what I try to do is then take, you know, this study that we were talking about tonight and make some determinations of where else you'll be investing your money into the safety pass system and streetscape improvements over the next 5 years. So obviously, that is the general picture, but based on our discussion tonight, this is obviously going to have to change. Because we may decide that we're going to reallocate certain, you know, spending, and maybe we're going to spend more on the evaluation, the studies next year, than what I've originally put into this plan. But the idea here is we've got to actually start programming projects on a year-by-year basis for what it is that you as a board want to do. And I think that way you'll start to feel like now we've got a real blueprint and we're accomplishing something. Another final thing that I want to say about this is that once you decide how you want to spend your money, what I will also do is essentially provide you with, at the, you know, on a periodic basis, an actual sources and uses statement at the end that shows you what your revenues are, what your expenses are, what your beginning fund balance is, and what your ending fund balance is. And I've done this in the past with the CIA, working in conjunction with your finance director and with your assessor, so that it's based on your revenues, it's based on what you spend. It gives you a clear picture what your accumulation of funds are, you know, where you need to adjust things. This particular scenario shows a reflection of the fact that 2028, we're going to need to come up with $700,000 for White Lake Road. One of the things that this suggests is that we work out, you know, an arrangement with the township board that we actually pay that money over a period of 5 years, so that you don't completely deplete all of your resources. So given the fact that this is a completely new type of thing that you are just now seeing, I don't know how much you want to discuss this tonight, but this is how I suggest you operate moving forward, with you deciding where your priorities should be and approximately how much you want to put into it each year. But at least now you have a clear financial picture of what the implications of that are. So if you want to spend $200,000, that means here's where you can't spend $200,000. Or this is where you want to accumulate money, this is how you do it, so that in the year 2028, you've got a fund balance of $500,000 to devote to something like that. So.
Sam, you look like you have something on your mind.
I'm just trying to figure out where we can, you know, I'd like to, it's not really, I'm with Dick with what he said. I like the way this formats out, and he gives you a little, you know, layman's terms on kind of where we're at with everything.
Yeah, things can be changed.
If we're,
Dynamic.
are we having a budget discussion right now? Or are we talking about how it's gonna be formatted right now?
Well, let me just say that this
Presented.
is what leads into, this is what will facilitate you having budget discussions every year. Because this is what your budget now will predominantly be based on. It'll give you guidance in terms of how to develop, how to present to the township board your budget, based on your major expenses.
If we wanted to do, pay, as the DDA, to pay for a Dixie corridor cleanup project, okay? Just basically clean up everything that's been neglected and it's nobody's responsibility, and MDOT doesn't do it, just like we patch the county roads for them. How would that be, how would we implement that, some sort of policy to get bids to say, hey, let's get a street sweeper out, let's get somebody to at least, twice a year clean the, paved shoulders, you know what I mean, or do, make sure it's safe, pick up trash, cut the, weeds, whatever, just, as part of a maintenance of the DDA corridor until it gets to where we want it to be, and, how would we, how would you implement that into,
It would have
it's not
to
gonna be a lot of money, compared to the numbers
Well,
we're talking, but it is something I would like to maybe talk about the need for a budget to,
Yeah.
because I know, you may not think that you notice that it looks run down or gravelly or shoddy, but your brain processes that it's not pristine, it's not clean, it's not neat, there's weeds growing, you know what I mean? So I think a part of, if we're not gonna be able to put up banners right away, and we're not gonna be able to put sidewalks in and trees right away, I don't think it's bad money spent to just try to genuinely clean up the appearance with a minimal investment. I would like the board to consider how we would implement that into our strategic plan, something like that. And I don't think it would be very costly.
I'm
This
definitely
is
for that.
primarily oriented towards the design, the study and design services and the actual bricks and mortar portion of
Right.
what you do. You want to incorporate, a maintenance element in that. We certainly, if that's the will of the board to do that, we certainly can do that. Now, that means, obviously, there will be a cost that we'll have to account for that will then require some adjustment in what you can invest in other things possibly. But, that has to be a decision of this board.
I'm just saying, maybe it's 50,000 a year, that we have in a budget that we can, we don't need to do it in the middle of winter, but, in the spring, clean it up. Like right now, it would have been nice a month ago to cut down some, just have somebody weed whack the weeds, and have somebody clean the sidewalk. I'm not talking big money, but there's just, I think it would, I notice it driving down the road, because I drive it every day and I have a building, and I'm sure Gus, he notices.
You see it in front of my, I have to
Everywhere,
take care
too.
of myself, actually.
So
I just take care of my side, I'm not gonna go to
Because
my neighbor
our
property.
residents do, use the paved shoulder if they have to walk. I see a lot of pedestrian traffic because I'm between apartment complexes. So there's a lot of people walking on Waterford Hill, you know what I mean? Maybe not as much on Dixie, to Dixie Highway, up to the highway itself. That's probably less traveled. But, I don't know, just a thought to,
Well, I'm coming, so I put the budget together. And I built it off of this, a lot of what they gave through here. Obviously, if you look at the safety path contribution, we still exceed cash flow. Matter of fact, based on Dick's plan here, which would include a little bit of legal, exclude a little bit, I put in some for legal, I put in some for, other third-party consultants, and a couple other miscellaneous things. Didn't put in enough probably to cover a safety path, or not safety path, but cleanup, but we're probably not that far off. We could basically fund everything in this without the safety plan's contribution. Safety plan's contribution was thinking they'd be more the last dollars. So maybe not a 50-50 split, but go through and say, okay, let's say we spent all this money and now we're short 40 grand or 50 grand or whatever. They would come in and pick that back piece up. Because again, the safety path is kind of made up of residents, and they vote on what they want to do. And so, it's not like even Dave or I we're one of 5 or 6 votes, so we can't even carry the day, so to speak. So they've had this priority matrix, and that's what they're putting together, but they were willing to become the last dollars for our projects. So we say, okay, we're gonna put 50 grand over here, now watch this now, but 50 grand over here to do the maintenance, so we know we're gonna be 50 grand short, they can come in and do that.
Because I think it's important for like the business owners on Dixie who pay into the millage, not the DDA, the millage, that there's a certain expectation that you're getting something for that.
But the percentage, we figured that out, Sam, the percentage that they contribute versus the rest of the township is small. And what the project that you're looking at having on the Dixie Highway is big, and it's disproportional. So, from there's that, but I would agree, and that's why they were saying, and somebody else brought that up too, is that, they pay into it too, they should get some benefit from it.
Well, and I don't think that I knew that, I'm probably not being educated enough to know to go to their meetings and say, hey, we wanna, you should do this, I have a safety path that runs along the side of my property that a developer put in, and it's never been maintained in the 18 years that
What's a
I.
sidewalk? It's not a safety path.
No, it's an 8-foot wide concrete safety path.
The one right in front of your building?
No, I'm talking by my house.
Oh, okay.
That they've never been on Stickney Road. And I call them if a tree falls down and blocks it, because you'd be surprised how many people quickly get off the dirt onto it. It runs through the woods. It was a path to nowhere, but the developer did put it in. It is part of our system, but I've never seen it ever maintained, because it's just a dead-end path to somewhere. And they do a good job on the safety path. I'm not beating up on them. I'm just saying there's like 30-some miles or whatever it is, and some pieces, more well-traveled, get more attention. If you're going along the county park or along Sashbar, whatever, they stay on top of that. The grass looks perfect. They have that blower that, you can only do so much with the resources they got. I get all that. I'm just, but, I just want to try to do what we can to help make it as good as we can for everybody, and get feel like we got something for paying into it too, that's all. But I'm not beating them up.
So, this is a first cut at this, okay? But it's, I'm hoping that you view this as a useful tool. However, it's got to become your tool, not just what I think is your ideas. So I believe, Mr. Chairman, we need to have, a sort of a mechanism for this to be reviewed and have more of the fingerprint or the thumbprint of the DDA put on this. So, for example, you want money allocated towards, if you read through this and if the priorities are all wrong, I need to know that. Because you have to have some kind of guiding document in terms of what you're going to be doing year to year. Otherwise, I think you're going to become very frustrated in your meetings, not knowing exactly where you're headed with things. Whereas something like this provides you a blueprint for that. So, I think we should have a working committee or some means to gain the input here from the entire body in terms of what you want this document to look like. Because the thing is, the numbers are now here for you to be able to make those kind of determinations. The expectations of revenues, and to the best I can, the estimation of costs are in something like this. And so look at it as more like a budgetary document that's going to have to constantly be updated to reflect new numbers, new circumstances, and different priorities. But it's got to be, it's at least a start from that standpoint.
Yeah, I'm looking at table 3A and 3B. It aligns with what we've already discussed. Our plans are for the next 2 years. So it even says in here for safety path that we're gonna split some costs with somebody. That would be nice.
I trust Dick's judgment. He did the CIA and has you were probably here for the last DDA. Were you?
Yeah, I was, as a matter of fact.
So I wouldn't know
I
how to
actually-
make
I
a suggestion to
actually
make
wrote
it
the
better. I'm
last
not a
EDA, the
finance
first
guy or
EDA
whatever,
plan.
so I don't have any comments on how to do something different. I wouldn't have a suggestion.
Well, but you don't, what you need to tell me is what your priorities are, you know? If you just say, all right, we want $50,000 programmed in here annually for maintenance, that's what I'll put in there. I mean, that's the kind of input that I need. Obviously, based on our discussion tonight, I may have to adjust some of these numbers. But I think, I think to the extent that what I need to know is, are the priorities correct in here? And what else do you need to see? What else would you like to see incorporated in here, at least for the next 5-year period? That's what I want to know. Not tonight necessarily, but that's what I'm hoping that how you'll treat this document.
Okay.
I believe that the plan that they will develop for us, however, the overall schematics will help us itemize those items for you.
Right.
So,
And I tried to base this as much as I could on the DDA plan I did base it on the DDA plan that you did adopt. But of course, those numbers, I was basing it on a TIF revenue of $5 million. And now we know it's going to be almost $10 million.
Okay. Do you think that Noah and Strauss could get us an idea of what the cost is going to be for both the above ground and below
Yeah,
ground? I know you said
I
possibly not by
will-
next
I will.
meeting, but the sooner we get it, the sooner. Because I think we're all in agreement here on this board that we
Yeah.
want to get it done. We just don't want to piacemeal it, right?
I
We don't
understand.
want to do the top and then 6 months later we do underground, and then, the first quote is change. We're having we're having different pricing to account for in our budget. So I'm with Chuck when he says, let's just get it all done, then we know what we're working with, then we just can start construction or, get bids out.
Okay.
So what do you think the time frame would be for them to come back with a full bid?
I'm going to push to try to get something back on your next agenda.
Jason kind of nodded like maybe,
Yeah.
in his body language
Well, there
when
should
you
be some
said it.
motivation there.
Yeah, seriously.
You know?
Everybody's got their
This is-
year-end
this is what-
quotas.
Let me tell you, being one, this is what consultants do.
Yeah.
They're opportunistic.
I just think that and I don't know that side, the grant side of it, asking for money, how we do all that, but I think the sooner we have that ability to ask for it, and show that we're serious and we put a lot of effort into it and we're willing to contribute into it, that
Yeah.
we can become a much more viable candidate for federal and state funding, sooner than later, I don't know.
We're running out of time. You have to have everything in by the first quarter. So we're running out of time on getting grant and fund money for, even if we go through apply, we will not, let's say, everything goes great, we get it all appropriated and everything else, then we're not even getting the money until 27.
Okay, but,
But if we miss the window in the next 4 months, then we're out till 28. So we got to get moving.
all right.
At
Well,
least
and
someone-
it just emphasizes the point,
And
whether
we
it's
need-
28, 29,
Dixie area
30, we
needs
gotta get in it, the sooner we're in the game.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question, because that's exactly my concern is that we're gonna sleep on this and then miss deadlines.
Yeah.
Well,
And
this was my intent for putting this document together, so that we didn't sleep on it and we started actively programming how we're going to spend money, because
not to have a long
the
discussion,
supervisor
but
is
who would,
absolutely correct about the time frame of receiving funds.
They would start now. Noah and Frost is, sorry.
I'm gonna ask you a question, and not to make this a conversation, but who would,
Noah
what
and
body
Frost.
goes after the funding, the grants? Does the applications, who would,
Depends on where you're applying to
Right.
and what the requirements are. So Noah and Frost got the one from SEMCOG for the help, the funding for the engineering study for White Lake to Deer Hill. Carlisle would probably put some together. We're gonna have to go out on our own, like if any DPW, McKee's pretty good at doing that. Any other federal, probably have to work with Carlisle, and somebody here is gonna have to take ownership of it and try to get it done as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on which source you're going after,
Yeah.
who's gonna be the players involved.
Typically, in the history of the township, typically, it's been your consultants working, in conjunction with your department heads.
Yeah.
The department heads don't have, it's a time-consuming process. Plus, it's a grant, applying for grants requires a fair degree of expertise, We do a fair number of recreation grants for our communities because we have people in the company that have expertise in doing it and know what the requirements are and know the funds, what funds that there are and where, and how you have to put the right words in the application to get those funds. And it's the same thing with engineers too. Water and sewer funds, the transportation funds. I know Noack and Frost have been very successful in that regard. So that's typically how it's worked in the township.
Okay.
Yep.
It's in here
Since we don't have
It
any
says
directors.
in this proposal that they would, they'll assist, it's $5,000 for an assist for each grant.
I know, it's just somebody's got to know that identify the grant, someone's got to say, all right, we want to go after that grant, there's still got to be somebody driving the train,
Yep.
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
Well, that's kind of the tough thing with the DDA, right? Because we don't have a director. We have a chairperson, and we got us.
And we have
So-
council.
And, yeah, but I'm still saying that McKee spends a lot of time on his DPW type grants and stuff, working with the
Right.
consultants.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like, I believe that, you can do an awful lot and get us way down there, but he's not gonna be able to get us across the finish line probably without some help and input from us.
Would it make sense for us to budget money to solicit somebody to do grants for the DDA since we don't employ a full-time person? No? Okay.
There's not a one size, as much as I would like to tell you that there's not a one size fits all in this category. You're basically, the consulting firms, and it's not just us, you've got 3 engineering firms that work with you, have specialized expertise in all of these areas and work with these things all the time. To try to find a person or even a quote-unquote grants consultant that is able to do that, I've never seen it work.
No, I think Sam was just asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is that should we factor in 25,000, but don't they take a percentage of the grant? Or, I thought
No.
Noack and Frost, that's kind of how they did that one with the SEMCOG, did they, or,
They might, we don't.
okay.
I mean,
Probably
'cause-
depends on the project, right? How much
Pardon
it-
me?
Probably depends on the project, how big it is,
Depends on
and
the
how much they're
project,
getting.
because,
to that.
as a consultant, you may be writing a grant for which you will have no future involvement in it, so at least there, but that's, I have money budgeted in here for administrative services it's put in here at a percentage of DDA revenue per year, and that will cover some of that cost.
But,
So
my
if you-
point was, is there if we were to pay someone to actively pursue, the grants, or if it's on nobody's radar, none of the engineering companies are thinking about it, you know what I mean? So do you need to, do you need to stipulate and say, hey, we got, $5,000, $10,000, if, you do, to do work for us? I don't know how it works, like who's checking to see what federal funds are available, then whose radar is it on, who's following the deadlines, and do they do all that for
Well-
free, or do we have to have a little bit of the money in the budget to direct them to focus on that?
Sam, what I'm trying to tell you is your consultants already do that. Remember, we have 80 communities that we work for. Oh, Noack and Frost has, I don't know how many. This is part of what, we are knowledgeable about and monitor these grant funds so that we are able to assist our communities when we find that those are going to be beneficial to them. So-
We didn't go after the SEMCOG one, Noack and Frost did.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
brought it to
Well,
the
yeah,
table,
so I'm
yeah.
trying to figure out how, because usually if nobody's driving, then it's on nobody's mind, that was my only.
Yeah, the consultants are on
They're
top of
doing it
it.
for other communities as well, so, and it's right in here. To Chuck's point, whether they take a percentage of the grant or they charge us upfront for going to get the grant, to
Now-
me, it's the same thing.
Ultimately, you know, when I'm done, helping you through this initial startup period, ultimately, you may need a dedicated person doing the kind of stuff I'm trying to do to help you. Technically, I mean, in most cases, that's what that person does. You end up having a part-time director or a position that is in the township that is part of their time is allocated to servicing the DDA or the CIA or whatever entity you have. That's usually part of their job to be able to do that too.
And if we had an economic development manager or something like that, that would be
Exactly
right in
right.
their line. We just don't happen to
That
have
is the
one.
case, or community development director, that's the case in most cases, that they are the kind of people that do that. But right now, I mean, and you have been for so long, relying upon your consultants to serve that role.
Do you feel that we get a fair amount of, compared to other communities, that we get,
Yeah, I think,
grants?
I
or
think you
is
do,
there-
I think you do as well as, I think you do as well as most townships. Always probably could do better, but no, I think you've gotten your fair share of money from that standpoint, especially in the area of recreation. We haven't done your recreation work recently, but, I know that we've been involved in the past of applying for grants and receiving them for the township. That's how Baycourt Park got started, for example. We were involved in the beginning of all that. So, yes, I think you do. But I think, do I think that there could be stronger emphasis placed upon that in the township? And, instilled in all the department heads to be thinking about that, to be, especially in the area of public works, recreation, and transportation. Those are the three big areas right there where the most money is available. And I'm fairly certain that Dave McKee's pretty much aware of all of those things. So I think some of these other enhancement grants, this is, where you've got people in place that can do it right now, but maybe long-term in the future, the township needs to look at somebody more dedicated for that. But it needs to be somebody that's more in a director-type role.
Well, we talked about it at the board level before.
Right.
Getting somebody that just is a grant specialist, and could they pay their own way
Yeah.
by getting us,
I don't-
if
I
you
don't know
paid
whether-
somebody of so much money to do grants and they brought in, a couple million, few million a year, around here and there, does it pay for itself? And is that beneficial?
If I personally knew if those kind of people existed, I would hire them. But I
'Cause
don't.
that's what I was thinking about doing when I retire, is be that guy. Seems like there's a need.
Because you're such a warm fuzzy guy.
I just smoosh people all day, that's all I would do.
I think
That's
we've
definitely
discussed the
good.
main points. Since we have you here, Dick, though, I would like to see do we have any update from the RFPs or the engineering plan, so we can get the RFPs for
Yeah,
the Gateway
they're-
Park?
No, they are moving forward on it.
Okay.
I wanted Jason to give you a status report. They've been authorized to begin on this, and they're beginning to do, the engineering evaluation of what additional information might need to be prepared for the RFP and to prepare the RFP. So they have begun on that. They were authorized several weeks ago to do that.
Did they give you any timeline of when they'd be ready?
I didn't, I don't, yeah,
Because it'd be good to catch
I wanted-
landscapers in their non-busy season.
Jason got out of here before I could ask him,
I'd love to be under contract with somebody to be one of the first projects of
Yeah.
next year.
He is aware of that we want to get this out for bids in the winter, so that will be a first project in spring. I will ask him to provide a status report for the DDA and put a memo together on the status of that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, sounds good. And so before I let you guys go and we adjourn, I went to a meeting. It was called the Main Street Oakland County DDA Workshop. So there's multiple DDA people in there, chair people, board members. They did have a few that had directors, like Ferndale had a director. And I asked him, do you serve the whole township? He said, no, I just do the DDA for Ferndale. Obviously, Ferndale's much larger than what we're working with. But I'm not gonna go through everything, but there's a couple things that I thought were interesting. So we can fund we can fund property to make it marketable for sale or use. So for instance, like the theater, you know, there's a real estate sign, but how well are they marketing it for sale or
It's not for sale.
projecting idea? It's not for sale anymore?
No, Han bought it a year ago.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah, but.
a different property, we could do that. We could market it and help it sell. Another thing that they brought up is that you can issue bonds to help for fundraising. You can fund marketing assist incentives. They talked about one day our TIF revenues are going to expire, and so instead of letting them lapse, it's best to amend them to extend them. That's a long way out, but I just wanted to bring that up. The most important thing that I learned that we really haven't been doing a great job on is so even our subcommittee meetings are supposed to be made aware to the public. So I wanted to, make that, even if it's just a Facebook post or on the website, like even if we're getting together in a non-forum setting, if we're discussing anything, we should be doing it open meetings. And so we've kind of let people know, but we could make it more formal, I think. So,
Even without a quorum?
even without a quorum. I asked that. Many people asked that same thing, and I was kind of surprised by that, but.
I believe it's at any time anything's being discussed
Yes.
about it.
Yeah, and
period.
it can be like, we're meeting at a restaurant, feel free to join us,
Right.
or something like that. It doesn't need to be in this room or anything like that. So that's pretty much the biggest parts that I got out of it. Again, I don't mean to keep everybody, but I did go to that meeting for many hours, so I figured I'd give you something. So I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Dick.